Layne. I printed up and dove deep into all the scientific studies that you reference in your growth hormone article, and I gotta say, your article is bullshit. I'm calling you out, bro. In this video, I'm going to break down and discuss why you can't trust Dr. Layne Norton.
I am the Hungarian experiment.
What is going on, world? Recently I made a video called Why You Can't Trust Dr. Eric Suduki. Suduki, I have no idea. I still don't know how to say his name properly, but I'm not going to dive deep into that because it's a long video. But to summarize, Dr. Eric sponsored a video on Facebook which appeared on my newsfeed challenging the benefits of intermittent fasting on muscle growth. And upon researching the scientific study that he cited, I concluded that he either didn't look into the research fully himself, or if he did, he was purposely skewing the verbiage to justify the point he was trying to make, leading to the title of my video being Why You Can't Trust Dr. Eric Suduki. Siddiqui, I don't know. From this video and my interaction with Dr. Eric on Twitter, as well as some of his colleagues or social media followers and friends, I was led to Dr. Layne's article on growth hormone because when I challenged Dr. Eric's rationalizing of why we shouldn't be doing intermittent fasting for muscle growth, I questioned him in regards to the 1,500 to 2,000% increase in daily natural growth hormone that men have after fasting for 20 to 24 hours, and asked him how this affects muscle growth. Again, I'm not going to dive deep into that, but basically he deleted my comment thinking he was just going to get rid of me and my questioning to his claim, and eventually going back and forth and him not saying anything, I created that video. Now, it appears that many people don't believe that growth hormone affects muscle growth.
Does growth hormone affect muscle growth? Today we're going to dive into a topic that is currently rather controversial, and I really don't understand why. There seem to be many doctors and scientists online that are claiming and stating that growth hormone doesn't affect muscle growth.
Especially Dr. Layne Norton and several other doctors, which is why I created a video called How Growth Hormone Affects Muscle Growth, to document and display how, although growth hormone doesn't physically go into the cell to affect muscle protein synthesis, without growth hormone or having a lack of natural growth hormone in the body, this affects the system down the line, hindering your testosterone levels and hindering your IGF-1 output, and in turn negatively affecting potential muscle growth. As I mentioned before, I created this video on how growth hormone affects muscle growth, which you can find in the description box below. Brett Crest, or this young guy from Manitoba who's currently in school for health and science, we were going back and forth on Twitter debating this concept of growth hormone's effect on muscle growth, and in an effort to challenge my point, he presented Dr. Layne's article on growth hormone and why he feels we shouldn't care or be focusing on it in regards to muscle growth, which I personally feel the opposite way about. I think hormonal optimization is key to acquiring your physical and mental goals in life, but we won't be focusing on that today. In today's video, we're going to break down and analyze Dr. Layne Norton's article on growth hormone and why I believe many of the points he is stating are either false or misleading because he's using rather weak scientific research to justify them, which is leading me to the conclusion to title this video Why You Can't Trust Dr. Layne Norton. So let's get into it. So you can see here on his website, Layne Norton, Coaching, Bodybuilding, PhD, Growth Hormone, Great Expectations, written by Layne Norton, February 26, 2016. Now again, the only reason I'm referencing and breaking down this article is because other people out there in the world are using this article and the science or the strength of the science that they believe is behind this article to justify why concerning ourselves with growth hormone is not important. And again, I believe completely the opposite. So let's get into it here. When I began reading bodybuilding magazines about a decade ago, as I peered into the bodybuilding world and began to take then what would become the first steps to becoming a bodybuilder, there were a few things that I knew would be imperative to my success. I had to eat protein, buckets full of it. I needed to avoid overtraining. I could not allow my workouts to take more than an hour for fear of cortisolic shock. Eating 6 to 8 meals per day was a given, and going more than 3 hours without eating was a sin. Finally, of great importance was the need to do everything in my power to enhance my hormonal responses to training. As I look back a decade later, what I thought were facts turned out to be misinterpreted data, and in some cases just complete bro science. I found I got way better gains from training every body part at least 2 times a week, and in the case of my legs, got great results from training them 3 times a week, sometimes for 2 hours per workout. This ended up being supported by science I didn't even know existed when I started bodybuilding, but had been conveniently overlooked by the muscle rags because it wasn't as marketable as vetting the perils of overtraining. Through my research in protein metabolism and my experience with myself and hundreds of clients, I found that most bodybuilders actually consume more protein than they need to maximize the benefits of the macronutrient, and also eat too frequently. A decade later, I had discovered that most of the things I thought I knew as facts turned out to be bro science. But what of hormones? Certainly maximizing hormonal responses to training and nutrition was essential. As a natural bodybuilder, I was not going to be getting supplemental hormones, so this meant I needed to maximize my production of hormones like growth hormone in order to achieve the natural pro-level physique I aspired to, right? Well, not exactly. Now, I'm not even going to get into this whole debate on whether or not he's a natural bodybuilder or not. There is a debate on the internet about his status as a natural pro-level physique competitor. You guys can go check it out for yourself, but real quick here, I have to say, after looking through photos and old bodybuilding competition videos, it's hard to believe that someone at the age of 22 can look like this. And then, within 3 to 4 years, look like this. Again, I'm not here to argue if he's natural or not. Leave your opinion in the comment section below. It's rather easy to pass certain steroid tests, and I found that those who go out of their way to claim that they're natural in almost everything that they do are typically hiding something. But besides your own judgment based on his physique development, unless he's just extremely gifted genetically, we have no proof of it. But I find it hard to trust that Dr. Layne Norton has never experimented with super physiological levels of either growth hormone or testosterone or steroids, and he's even competed and excelled in many bodybuilding and powerlifting competitions that many who participate in are known to be steroid users but are able to be clean when the tests come around. Again, this video isn't about Layne or his natural status, but it's on his views on growth hormone and this article and how I disagree with the weak science he uses. So let's get back to the article here. So here he continues on, growth hormone, what is it and what does it do and why are we trying to increase it? Growth hormone, or GH, has long been purported by gurus and bodybuilders as the holy grail of anabolic salvation. The rage over GH even produced an entire category of sports supplements whose purpose is to enhance GH in order to increase muscle mass. But what does GH actually do? What evidence is there that growth hormone is really anabolic? Growth hormone is a peptide hormone that acts both directly through the GH receptor on various tissues and by increasing systematic IGF-1 to exert its effects. It has been determined that the growth and maturation of the musculoskeletal system is mediated by changes in growth hormone and IGF-1. During youth, a deficiency of growth hormone can result in slowed growth of the musculoskeletal system, whereas an excess can cause accelerated changes in growth and stature. A chronic release of excess growth hormone, called acromegaly is a syndrome in which the pituitary overproduces growth hormone, typically due to a tumor resulting in greatly increased height and growth of hands, feet, and face. It is often associated with gigantism, a condition also caused by excessive growth hormone release. Additionally, growth hormone and lean body mass also decrease in accordance with age, leading many people to suggest that the reduction in growth hormone with age may directly cause decreases in lean body mass observed with age. Furthermore, many experts have cited studies demonstrating that supplementation of growth hormone in growth hormone deficient individuals normalize lean body mass to body fat ratios as further evidence that growth hormone is anabolic. They also point to the massive amounts of muscle mass carried by IFBB pros that use supraphysiological amounts of growth hormone as to another piece of evidence as to why growth hormone is anabolic. These pros are using many other drugs, however, and trying to extrapolate the effects of supraphysiological growth hormone supplementation to what the normal person can get through training and diet is tenuous at best. Perhaps the strongest argument to be made for growth hormone being anabolic by gurus is noting the exercise-induced increases in growth hormone associated with weight training. Specifically, high-volume bouts of exercise that recruit large muscle groups and require a high degree of effort will elevate growth hormone significantly, tenfold, for approximately 40 minutes. However, while these pieces of information raise interesting possibilities for growth hormone, none of them actually conclusively demonstrate that physiological increases in growth hormone are anabolic. So, what I would like to point out from this section of the article here, I'm not going to dive into those scientific studies because those are basically just stating the effects of growth hormone and what it technically does. But I would like to point out here at the end is where he states, while these pieces of information raise interesting possibilities for growth hormone, none of them actually conclusively demonstrate that physiological increases in growth hormone are anabolic. Now, I have to say that this is ridiculous in my opinion. If you understand how the body works, or you watch my video, which hopefully you'll do after this video, on how growth hormone affects muscle growth. Yes, growth hormone doesn't physically go into the cell to affect muscle protein synthesis, but it is the precursor to the essential elements behind muscle protein synthesis and muscle growth. Here, we can even see in this article, it's saying that growth hormone is an anabolic tissue building hormone that increases the transport of certain amino acids to cells and accelerates protein synthesis and affects fat metabolism. It's not saying it directly affects protein synthesis, but it accelerates it, it enhances it, it affects it. Here we have another thing where it's stating here, growth hormone, testosterone, and estrogen are anabolic hormones. Adrenaline, cortisol, and glucagon are catabolic hormones. Here again, anabolic hormones include growth hormone, testosterone, and estrogen. Like, where does he get off stating that growth hormone is not anabolic is ridiculous in my opinion. But here again too, we can see that most of the anabolic effects of growth hormone are not direct metabolic effects on target tissues such as muscle, but are in fact the result of increased production of insulin-like growth factor 1, or IGF-1, from the liver, as a consequence of which the serum concentration of IGF-1 is increased, as well as the production of IGF-1 in tissues that are responsive to growth hormone, such as bone and muscle. I agree with what he is saying that none of the studies conclusively demonstrate that physiological increases in growth hormone are anabolic. Because again, we're going to repeat this again, it doesn't physically go in the cell, but as we just showed there and shared, and I'm going to repeat this again, most of the anabolic effects of growth hormone are not direct metabolic effects on target tissues such as muscle, but are in fact the result of increased product of IGF-1. But in general, focusing on trying to increase your growth hormone naturally in the body through physical exercise, fasting, proper nutrition and diet, good sleep, and a host of other factors, these will all have an effect on your muscle growth long term, just not 100% directly. But again, without having the precursors to muscle building or limiting the precursors, so for instance, if you halved the amount of growth hormone your body secretes naturally, this will in turn negatively affect your production of IGF-1, in turn negatively affecting how much muscle you can grow. But let's continue on with this article here, because we're just about to get into the juicy stuff, where he is using what I believe is really weak science to try to justify his points here. And and making very misleading claims. Now, before we do dive deeper, I also feel a big question that we need to draw here is, what are we talking about here in this article? Are we talking about natural growth hormone levels in the body and trying to increase and optimize them? Or is this article focused on growth hormone supplementation? I have to say, it's not quite clear from his introduction, besides his discussion behind his necessity to understand due to his natural pro-level status. But as you will see, all of the studies that we're about to look at, it is clearly focused on growth hormone supplementation. So, Dr. Layne, is this something else we can't trust you on? Why, if you're worried on natural growth hormone levels in the body, as a natural bodybuilder, you're focused on all articles that are focused on growth hormone supplementation? It doesn't make sense, man. So we continue on here. As discussed previously, excess growth hormone can cause supraphysiological changes in growth and muscle, and a deficiency in growth hormone will cause a reduction in growth. Many people have taken this information and concluded that the anabolic response to growth hormone is linear, and thus increasing growth hormone in a physiological range will have profound anabolic effects. When you actually view the scientific data, however, it paints a very different picture. While it is true that supplementing growth hormone deficient individuals with exogenous growth hormone will normalize lean body mass to body fat ratios by increasing lean body mass and decreasing body fat, the gains in lean body mass are not from increases in actual muscle tissue. The increase in lean body mass is rather due to increased whole body protein synthesis, resulting in hypertrophy of connective tissue, and also from increased water retention due to alterations in the regulations of electrolytes and water by the kidneys. Articles 6 and 7, which you're going to dive into. Accordingly, supplementation with growth hormone in healthy individuals does not increase strength compared to placebo, and this we'll see in articles 8, 9, and 10. So here, he begins referencing some scientific studies that, again, I don't 100% agree with how he is using them to justify his points, so let's look through them quickly. Study number 6, growth hormone stimulates the collagen synthesis in human tendon and skeletal muscle without affecting myofibrillar protein synthesis. So real high level here, this was a 14-day study focused on growth hormone supplementation, where we investigated the effects of 14-day administration of 33 to 50 microkilograms of recombinant human growth hormone in healthy young individuals. The study was done on 10 healthy sedentary men. All the participants did one bout of leg extension exercises. The results suggested that growth hormone is more important in strengthening the matrix tissue than for muscle cell hypertrophy in adult human musculotendinous tissue. This doesn't prove that growth hormone is not good for muscle cell hypertrophy or it doesn't affect muscle growth. It just states that growth hormone is more important for strengthening matrix tissues. Now, they do state that increased growth hormone availability stimulates matrix collagen synthesis in skeletal muscle and tendon, but without any effect upon myofibrillar protein synthesis. But as we discussed earlier, we know that growth hormone doesn't directly affect muscle protein synthesis, but it helps increase IGF-1, which in turn affects muscle protein synthesis. And also, a 2-week study is not long-term enough, in my opinion, to dictate muscle growth, especially when you're testing 10 sedentary men only doing 100 leg extensions. In my opinion, this study is weak to try to draw any type of conclusion from. Study done for 2 weeks on 10 sedentary healthy males. And then study number 7, the acute and chronic effects of growth hormone on renal regulation of electrolyte and water homeostasis. So this was a study done in 2007 on rats. This review will examine the existing literature on renal electrolyte and water handling following acute and chronic growth hormone exposure. What does this have to do with discussing muscle growth or how growth hormone affects muscle growth? Absolutely nothing. Now, from my understanding with this study and the claim he is is making is that the increase in lean body mass is rather due to increased muscle body protein synthesis, resulting in hypertrophy of connective tissues, and also from increased water retention due to alterations in the regulations of electrolytes and water by the kidneys. Again, I don't understand what he's trying to say here. When looking at the conclusion of this study, it shows that, as shown in this review, there seems to be a general gap in the knowledge on the signaling mechanisms downstream to growth hormone, since the renal effects observed after systematic application of growth hormone does not seem to be mediated by known secondary mediators or hormone systems. Hopefully, further research within this field will be able to identify the secondary mediators responsible for the observed renal effects and possibly document further roles of growth hormone in the kidney. Article number 6 there is an extremely short-term study done on an extremely small sample group on sedentary men doing one performance exercise. And this second article, article number 7, you present is about growth hormone deficient individuals, stating that a lot of further research needs to be done. So how can you draw any concrete conclusions or make a statement like you did from these studies? That's absolutely ridiculous to me. But let's continue on, because it only gets worse from here. And this is where I feel Dr. Layne Norton is extremely disingenuous and misleading. Ah yes, articles 8, 9, and 10. So here he's saying, accordingly, supplementation with growth hormone in healthy individuals does not increase strength compared to placebo, and references these 3 studies. Again, healthy individuals. Study number 8 here, effect of recombinant human growth hormone on the muscle strength response to resistance exercise in elderly men. This was a study done in 1994, conducted on 18 healthy elderly men aged 65 to 82 years old for 14 weeks to induce a trained state. The subjects were then randomized to be supplemented with growth hormone or placebo following another 10 weeks of study. What they found was body weight did not change in either group, but lean body mass increased and fat mass decreased in the supplemented group. So what does this study show? If you supplement old men with growth hormone, they may gain some lean body mass. Great. Great. Healthy men. We're looking at 65 to 80-year-olds. Article number 9. Lack of effect of recombinant human growth hormone on muscle morphology and growth hormone insulin-like growth factor expression in resistance-trained elderly men. Again, a study done in 1996, conducted on 18 healthy elderly men aged 65 to 82 years old. The subjects initially underwent progressive resistance training for 14 weeks and were then randomized to receive growth hormone supplementation or placebo while undertaking a further 10 weeks of training. These results indicate that growth hormone supplementation in exercising elderly men does not augment muscle fiber hypertrophy or growth hormone expression. Similar to the study above, what does this study have to do with anything in regards to natural growth hormone optimization in developing men? What does this study show? If you give elderly men over the age of 65 years old, growth hormone, it doesn't augment their muscle fiber hypertrophy. Who cares? Study number 10. The effect of growth hormone and resistance exercise on muscle growth and strength in older men. This was a study done in 1995. Almost a full 25 years ago. This study was conducted on 23 healthy sedentary men between ages 66 and 68. So at least we know now that they're sedentary. But they had low serum IGF-1 levels following a 16-week progressive resistance exercise program were randomly assigned to growth hormone supplementation. So of the 23 healthy sedentary men, only 8 were on growth hormone, 15 on placebo. These observations suggest that resistance exercise training improved muscle strength and anabolism in older men. But these improvements were not enhanced when exercise was combined with daily growth hormone supplementation. So here we have another study showing that growth hormone supplementation in men over 65 has little to no effect on muscle. So, I have to say, this is where I get rather disappointed with this article and the claims he is making here, and why I believe you already need to stop trusting Dr. Layne Norton. So, just to review, he made this statement that accordingly, supplementation with growth hormone in healthy individuals does not increase strength compared to placebo. Now, once again, this doesn't justify anything in regards to natural growth hormone increases or optimization in the body, but I feel he is being extremely disingenuous here by stating that accordingly, supplementation with growth hormone in healthy individuals does not increase strength compared to placebo, even putting "not" in bold caps, but references 3 studies done on men over 65 years old. Not just 65 years old, some going up to 82 years old. Yes, they are healthy, but this is such a narrow look at such a small group of people that are already past the body's developmental stage of growth, and you're using these weak studies to justify health advice to all healthy individuals. Like, really, Dr. Layne? Is this article aimed at 65-year-olds when you use terms like bro science? Why even include these studies, Layne? Why? Because you needed something to justify your weak narrative. You needed to use 3 studies that are almost 25 years old, done on 65 to 82-year-old men, to justify that supplementation with growth hormone in healthy individuals does not increase strength. This is bullshit, in my opinion. Shame on you, Layne. You cannot trust this guy. How can you trust someone who is going to mislead you like this? If he looked at these studies, he is aware of what he did there and the claim that he made, and not referencing that these guys are 65 to 82 years old. Or if he just scanned these articles and utilized their abstracts, then it proves that he doesn't look into his studies fully. So, there's absolutely no excuse here. Either way you look at it, Dr. Layne Norton, you can't be trusted when you're misleading people like this. You are a doctor. So he then continues on, so while supplementing with exogenous growth hormone in growth hormone deficient individuals may normalize lean body mass to body fat ratios, the increase in lean body mass is due to water retention associated with increased collagen formation, whole body protein synthesis, and changes in kidney regulation of water and electrolytes, not from actual muscle tissue. And again, basing these off these very short-term studies done on very old men, or those 2 other studies that I thought were rather weak and short term as well. But furthermore, adding supraphysiological exogenous amounts of growth hormone to supplement identical resistance training programs in young men did not lead to improvements in skeletal muscle protein synthesis, muscle mass, or strength compared to placebo. Article 11. The effect of growth hormone and resistance exercise on muscle growth in young men. So again, he is using this study to state that supraphysiological exogenous amounts of growth hormone to supplement identical resistance training programs in young men did not lead to improvements in muscle protein synthesis or muscle mass or strength. Let's look into this study. So this was a 12-week study focused on growth hormone supplementation. Just again, he is stating that in the article here, but again, his whole article is about just natural growth hormone, but again, using all these and making all these conclusions based on supplementation. But again, 12-week study focused on growth hormone supplementation. It was conducted on 16 people, only 7 of which were on growth hormone, and they were all untrained individuals. The study was done in 1992, so 28 years old. Now, this is a bit better of a study, at least it is 3 months long, but of course only really done on 7 people, as the other 9 from the study were placebo. And when we dive into the actual study, we can see that, the first thing I would say is that they were all untrained to begin with. So, of course, both groups are going to see great results from training, and there will be, as we will dive into another study in a second here, noob gains, as we call them in the industry, which eventually taper off after, consistent training over several months. Secondly, I question the efficacy of this study, especially especially it being done 28 years ago. Here they are claiming that in the young men studied, resistance exercise with or without growth hormone resulted in similar increments in muscle size, strength, and muscle protein synthesis, indicating that the larger increase in fat-free mass with growth hormone treatment was probably due to an increase in lean tissue other than skeletal muscle, and 2, resistance training supplemented with growth hormone did not further enhance muscle anabolism and function. And here they even say muscle strength improvements. In both groups, muscle strength improved on all weightlifting exercises, as we're going to see in a table here, and the relative percent improvement on each exercise, so the placebo they did ranges here, and that's what I'm going to get into in a sec, the range from 26 to 73% versus growth hormone, which was 33 to 71%, and the average improvement for all exercises, placebo was, when they averaged it up, 50 to a plus or minus of 5, and growth hormone 54 with a plus or minus of 5, and they're saying these were identical for each group. Furthermore, although the concentric force producing capabilities of the knee extensor and flexor muscles increased in both groups, these increases and the increments in isometric force production were not greater in the growth hormone tested group. So as we just saw there, in this study, they're making the claim that there was no or almost identical differences in muscle strength improvements, but when analyzing some of the charts and the tables in regards to muscle and strength improvement, we can see here that this too, I believe, is representing disingenuous data. They are claiming here that there was similar increments in muscle strength between growth hormone and placebo groups, but when looking here, we can see that this is false. The percentage of change between placebo and growth hormone groups is different, but when you average out the total percentages of the change across the board for all the exercises, they are similar. I'm sorry, and no need to shit on those conducting this study fucking almost 20, 30 years ago, but comparing the muscle strength increases or the amount of weight lifted between shoulder presses and bicep curls is going to be quite different after 3 months of training. You may be able to increase the shoulder press of an untrained individual by 20 to 30, maybe even 40 to 50 pounds in the first few weeks to a couple months of training once the technique is developed. But with a bicep curl, once the fundamentals are learned, you're not drastically going to be increasing the weight. You're not going to go from 10 pounds to 60 pounds at the end of the 3 months of training. So I believe that to average out these exercises together is a little ridiculous in my opinion. So let's look at this chart deeper now. Shoulder press percentage increase in the placebo group was 6% positive change, while the growth hormone group had a 10% positive change. I'm sorry, but that's not similar or identical. That's a bit of a difference. Bench press in placebo had a 6% change, while the growth hormone group had an 11% change. Deltoid, which I didn't see anywhere them describe what the deltoid exercise was. Maybe it was like flies, but like, or lateral raises, but like, come on, a 1% increase or change, like what was that exercise? I'm quite interested, but a 1% decrease from the placebo group. Bicep, of course, was only a 1% change, and as you continue down the chart, there's a slight or almost substantial increase with the growth hormone group compared to placebo besides the leg press. Are you trying to tell me that with another 6 to 9 months of training that those slight percentages wouldn't have a greater long-term effect down the line compared to the placebo group? That having an extra 4% muscle strength on your shoulder press every day and an extra 5% increase in bench press strength every day won't have a greater long-term effect compared to placebo? This, in my opinion, is another ridiculous study to utilize. It has flaws. It's almost 30 years old, and it was done for 3 months on technically 7 untrained individuals, as the other 9 that they tested were placebo, and there was noticeable increase in muscle strength. So it would be understandable, Layne, if maybe 1 or 2 of your articles was a little bullshit here. But right now, every article we've gone through that you're trying to use to make these statements and make these claims are rather ridiculous and very weak science. Now you continue on here saying, based on the aforementioned data, it is clear that supplementing with growth hormone is not anabolic to muscle tissue, but certainly increasing growth hormone in response to resistance training is important, right? I mean, we've all been told how crucial it is to use training protocols to maximize natural growth hormone response to training, and many training programs are constructed with a central theme of maximizing growth hormone production. One well-known guru even preaches restricting food intake post-workout in order to maximize growth hormone produced during a workout. Certainly, growth hormone produced during a workout must be anabolic, right? Or is this just more bro science? Fortunately for us, Dr. Stuart Phillips' lab at McMaster University in Canada has done extensive research on this very topic. In one study, they compared two training protocols. One protocol that caused a very drastic increase in circulating growth hormone levels, and another that maintained basal levels of growth hormone. Both protocols compared differences in protein synthesis and hypertrophy of the upper arms in response to training, but one protocol also paired the arm workout with a large muscle group, legs. Working out a small muscle like arms does not increase growth hormone release, whereas working out a large muscle group, i.e. quads, does. Basically, the arm workouts were identical. The only difference was that in between the groups was that only one worked arms, and the other worked arms immediately followed by legs in order to cause a significant growth hormone response. Indeed, the arm-only workout did not increase growth hormone in response to training, whereas the arm plus leg group increased growth hormone by over tenfold, in Article 12 as we're about to look in here. Even though there was a massive difference in growth hormone responses between the groups, there was no difference in the rate of protein synthesis in the arm muscles post-training, and there was no difference between the groups in arm muscle hypertrophy after 15 weeks. So let's look at Article 12 here. Elevations in ostensibly anabolic hormones with resistance exercise enhance neither training-induced muscle hypertrophy nor strength of the elbow flexors. So this study was done in 2009, conducted on 12 healthy young men who trained their elbow flexors and by doing bicep curls for 15 weeks. In one training condition, the participants performed isolated bicep curl exercise, and in the other training condition, participants performed identical arm exercise followed immediately by high volume of leg resistance exercise to elicit large increase in endogenous hormones. There was significant elevations in growth hormone and IGF-1 and testosterone immediately and 15 and 30 minutes after the second training condition with leg resistance training. Strength increased in both arms, but the increase was not different between both training conditions. So again here, Dr. Norton, this is a ridiculous study to use to draw the type of conclusion you're doing here in your article. A study done on 12 people. I'll give you the 15 weeks here is finally a decent length of testing, but in my opinion, again, not enough time to dictate muscle growth and optimal muscle growth, especially in newbies with no or very little previous weightlifting experience. Now, this is going to be quite bro science-y here, but we all know of noob gains. You're going to get some great results when stimulating your central nervous system and taxing your muscles in the beginning. The question ultimately, though, is how to keep that growth occurring long term past the point of the body's initial adaptation to weightlifting. What are the factors that we need to manipulate and optimize in our lives to keep our bodies in the best state to promote muscle growth? That's the real question, and I think growth hormone is the key. But along with this too, this study is testing the strength and muscle growth capacity of the bicep. I don't know about most of you out there who have been lifting for a long time, but I've been lifting for well over a decade now, and as we lightly mentioned in the last study, your bicep curl strength won't drastically increase or change over a short period of time, or even a long period of time. I have to say, my overall curling weight and bicep size is one of my slowest growers. I can still get great time under tension and overload my biceps with light weight, but I think measuring the bicep over a 15-week study on 12 noob lifters is a little silly to draw a conclusion about long-term muscle growth, or how Dr. Norton here is trying to use it in his article to justify that growth hormone produced during a workout isn't anabolic, or just in general won't benefit you in regards to muscle growth. And I have to say, another big flaw with this study is that they trained both conditions at the same time. So basically what they did here, and we'll go over how the study was actually done, but in weeks 1 to 6, the participants trained each arm 3 times over 2 weeks. They trained in a manner that allowed 72 hours between low hormone and high hormone training days. So there wasn't much training in week 1 to 6. They just trained arms with bicep curls 3 times over 2 weeks. Like, that's not much training at all, but okay. So they did Monday for high intensity, or the high hormone day with the leg training. Then they did Tuesday, then they did Friday, and then week 2 they did Monday, and then Thursday and Friday. And the high hormone sessions are shown with the asterisks. And as they're saying here, this approach was taken to ensure that the enhanced muscle protein synthetic response, which can be elevated in the untrained state for 48 hours, occurred exclusively on the background of basal hormone concentrations for the low hormone day. But as you see here, in weeks 7 to 15, an extra training session was added to enhance the training stimulus so that each arm trained twice per week, with at least 48-hour following each arm only trial. So example, week 7, on a Monday, they did the high hormone training for one arm, and then followed it with leg exercises. Then on the Tuesday, they did the other arm. Then they waited till Thursday and then did the high hormone with this and then the leg. And then on Friday they did this arm. So basically they went back and forth with the training. They didn't like really control this experiment at all. So, you know, even several days after, I believe you can still have a great growth hormone response in the body from training and doing something you've never done before. So they try to draw the conclusion that there's no difference from the high hormone training to the low hormone training in regards to muscle growth. But they are aware and even mention that the elevated states of hormone can last approximately 48 hours. So again, I have to say, this is kind of like a silly study here, testing the biceps to see if there's great muscle growth and only doing one arm training. There's a lot of weakness and flaws to this study, and it's just silly in my opinion. And I have to say, I've looked at Dr. Stuart Phillips because Dr. Layne Norton here mentions him, and I've seen him in several other studies. And I have to say, I could probably do a full video just on him as well too. So if you guys are interested in that, let me know in the comment section below. But let's just wrap up this video here. So back to the article. He then continues on, if workout-induced growth hormone was so anabolic, why was a protocol that caused a 10-fold greater increase in growth hormone no more anabolic than a program that didn't increase growth hormone at all? And as I just explained, it's because that scientific study was garbage, because it was measuring bicep in over a 3-month period. Like, you're not going to see crazy growth anyways. Additionally, while measurements like post-workout P70S6K phosphorylation and myofibrillar protein synthesis are strongly correlated with long-term increases in muscular hypertrophy, the exercise-induced rise in growth hormone have absolutely no statistical association with hypertrophy. Article 13. So Article 13 here, I'm not going to dive too deep into it. It's another study done by and with Stuart Phillips, where he is quoting and referencing the previous study that I just broke down, which I think is kind of garbage to use to make any serious conclusions with. So there are a host of flaws with this study, and this study is an analysis of that study. So Layne then continues on in his article to say, if this data doesn't convince you that physiological changes in growth hormone associated with training are not important in regards to training, then perhaps this tidbit of information will. This little tidbit here is going to change you now. Cardio actually increases growth hormone. That's right. Low intensity cardiovascular cardio actually increases growth hormone. Article 14. Last time I checked, lots of cardio is not exactly associated with muscle growth. Finally, it has also been demonstrated that fasting increases growth hormone. which I believe in, and I do on a daily basis. I've seen several trainers recommend prolonged fasting in an effort to maximize growth hormone. This has to be one of the most bro-telligent things I've ever heard. I'm sorry, Layne, but along with everything else I just debunked, this is a big reason why people shouldn't trust you. Stating that last time I checked, lots of cardio is not exactly associated with muscle growth is an extremely bro thing to claim, especially when the study that you've referenced, they state here that a number of studies have suggested an intensity threshold exists for exercise-induced growth hormone release. An exercise intensity above lactate threshold and for a minimum of 10 minutes appears to elicit the greatest stimulus to the secretion of HGH. And then as we see here, the impact of chronic exercise training on the exercise-induced growth hormone response remains equivocal. Recent evidence suggests that endurance training results in decreased resting HGH and a blunted exercise-induced growth hormone release, which may be linked to an increased tissue sensitivity to human growth hormone. So I'm done calling you doctor. Layne, you have a bachelor's of science in biochemistry and a PhD in nutritional science with honors, which you regularly tote around to justify your legitimacy to discuss issues in regards to health and nutrition, but you say things like, last time I checked, lots of cardio is not exactly associated with muscle growth, and then within another sentence you call someone bro-telligent. Are you fucking serious, man? You say, last time I checked, lots of cardio is not exactly associated with muscle growth, and use an article, use a scientific study that says there's a threshold, about 10 minutes is the greatest response, and that prolonged chronic exercise training decreases resting HGH levels. Like, you are the biggest bro scientist out there, man. And you're an actual doctor. How ignorant are you, Layne? You want to talk about bro science? Your whole article is bro science. And in my opinion, it does nothing to disprove the fact that naturally elevated levels of growth hormone in the body in young, healthy men can lead to increased muscle growth. Growth hormone levels in the body can be naturally elevated in many ways, as shown in this video, and I've displayed in many other videos on my YouTube channel through areas such as physical exercise, nutrition, cardio, fasting, sleep, sex, the social aspects of life. I believe almost every factor in life has an effect on our hormonal output. You can't deny that everything affects us as human beings. But you probably would, because there's no exact scientific study done in 2 weeks to say anything that you can point to make an article that is extremely misleading. And just to wrap up your garbage article here on growth hormone and all this false knowledge and weak science that you're spreading around. So are you saying, is growth hormone worthless? Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying growth hormone has absolutely no use and is completely unimportant. In growth hormone deficient people, supplementing with growth hormone normalizes body fat through increased lipolysis. However, it is still unclear if physiological increases in growth hormone lead to enhanced fat loss. So it is unclear, but you're stating here 100% that people should listen to you and that you're right. But it's still unclear. Workout-induced growth hormone is not anabolic, okay, and not associated with hypertrophy. Well, again, from before, and if you know anything about the body, we understand that, again, it's not directly associated with hypertrophy. But as you say here, but rather seems to be more important in substrate mobilization through increasing fatty acid availability during training. This most likely explains why growth hormone increases even during cardio in order to provide fatty acids for working muscles. Growth hormone is not completely unimportant, but the emphasis that has been placed on it for anabolism has been drastically overstated and in many cases completely fabricated. You mean like most of your article here? The truth is that growth hormone has a permissive effect on anabolism. So you agree. If we look up permissive here, because I don't understand why you're using this kind of word to describe it, but here you finally admit in your stupid article that the truth is that growth hormone has a permissive effect on anabolism, and the definition of permissive is allowing or characterized by great or excessive freedom of behavior. Allowed but not obligatory. Optional. So it's optional, where you've been stating throughout this whole article that growth hormone is not anabolic. We can't trust you. Deficiencies in growth hormone will impair growth, and supplementing with growth hormone in deficient individuals normalizes lean body mass to body fat ratios. So perhaps it is time for the bro scientists to pull their heads out of their behinds and tell the truth about the actual role of growth hormone. But what do you think, guys? Do you think Layne has any legitimacy here with the studies he utilizes and the article that he wrote here to justify any kind of claim that growth hormone, natural levels of growth hormone, or trying to purposely increase natural levels of growth hormone in the body in young men doesn't affect muscle growth? He didn't prove that or justify that in his article, in his own explanations and claims, and when he did try to use scientific research, he used weak or misleading or disingenuous research to try to prove that statement or claim that he is making. Now, as I mentioned here, I personally believe that growth hormone affects muscle growth long term in the body, and focusing on naturally elevating growth hormone levels in the body, especially in men, by optimizing certain factors in life is the key to a host of benefits, from fat loss to muscle growth to cognitive function and overall mood and energy levels. Again, growth hormone doesn't directly affect all of these, but without growth hormone or having a limited amount of growth hormone production in the body, you will negatively hold yourself back and hinder your results in these areas. This is a major factor that these scientists, these doctors out there aren't discussing. Because why? They feel that they can't discuss it because there's no exact documentation and exact proof on it. This is a theory and a concept that I believe with the current science we have, we can't prove this 100% yet. But again, if you guys are interested, go check out my video, How Growth Hormone Affects Muscle Growth, and you will see how growth hormone affects the whole system. And again, it affects muscle growth, it affects fat loss, it affects your cognitive function and overall mood and energy levels. So I personally believe that guys like Dr. Layne here, or Dr. Eric Sudicki from the other video, or Stuart Phillips, who believe that growth hormone isn't a key factor that you should be focusing on, I believe they're extremely misleading. And until I find some real, legitimate, justified research out there, I'm going to continue to believe this because I haven't seen anything that disproves that theory. And I personally been experimenting with it on myself. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. I know it was a little bit long, but I wanted to be thorough with it. So if you guys enjoyed this video, I'd love you to go smash that like button, and of course, leave me a comment. I want to know what you guys think. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me and what I had to say here? And I want to know, have you guys looked into any of the scientific research? It's all in the description box below there. It's all on Layne's growth hormone article, so you guys can go research all this stuff, go find it for yourself. Again, I went through all these articles to find out the legitimacy behind this. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you found value in this, if you guys enjoyed this video, I'd love you to go smash that like button, and of course leave me a comment. I want to know what you guys think about this whole video, and let me know if you guys want to see another one. Thank you guys so much for watching. Why you can't trust Dr. Layne Norton.
I am the Hungarian experiment.